Relay, we're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. The continued updates to the women's ring IQ pound-for-pound list and how they must reflect this past weekend's action. Up until this point, Mikaela Mayer sat in the number 6 spot of the ring IQ pound-for-pound list, but as a result of dropping that decision to Alycia Baumgartner.
You guys know the rules. No fighter coming right off a loss and no fighter absent of a world title.
No fighter is allowed to maintain a spot under those circumstances. So Mikaela Mayer is out. Alycia Baumgartner, Unified Ring Magazine and Lineal Champion Alycia Baumgartner is in.
At number 6.
That's not all, folks. 2-division champion Terry Harpier of the United Kingdom. She emerges on the list in the number 7 spot after having pried away the WBA title in dominant fashion from Hannah Rankin of Scotland.
Let's get into how all of this breaks down.
Alycia Baumgartner ranks in at number 6, just behind Senicia Estrada, 2-division champion Senicia Estrada, who, like Alycia Baumgartner, beat 2 champions and took their belts from them, with the difference being the proverbial tiebreaker.
Tiebreaker is that Senicia Estrada is a 2-division champion, an unbeaten 2-division champion, whereas Alycia, she's only ever been a champion at one weight.
Now, if Alycia Baumgartner can get her hands on a WBA champion, take that belt from her, that will be enough for Alycia to advance ahead of Senicia Estrada, until such a time as Senicia collects a 3rd scalp from a champion.
So that cookie crumbles.
Now, when it comes to the number 7 ranked Terry Harper, who ranks in just behind Alycia Baumgartner, Alycia who took her belt, Terry, she's beaten 2 champions as well. She beat the long-reigning WBC super featherweight champion of Finland, Eva Wahlström, for the WBC title at 130 pounds, and more recently, she moved all the way up there to junior middleweight, took Hannah Rankin's title, took her title from her, so she's beaten 2 champions, and she's a current reigning...
She's a 2-division champion like Senicia Estrada's a 2-division champion.
But because she lost that fight to Alycia, well, wouldn't make much sense ranking Terry ahead of the woman that beat her now, would it?
No, it wouldn't.
So she ranks in at number 7, behind Senicia and behind Alycia. When it comes to Mikaela Mayer, she's been ejected off the list, but she's a good enough boxer that I think she can see herself becoming a world champion at another weight. That is not outside the realm of possibility at all. I said in my previous video, I think she should go to welterweight. Now that Jessica Kamara is there vying for the newly vacated WBA title, she should see about booking a fight with her, because if she can win that title,
She's back in the mix of everything,
she can get right back on this list.
and I think she can beat Jessica Kamara. All she's got to do is wait for the outcome of that fight between Jessica and Diana Santana to be decided, then target the winner.
Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Things you need to look out for, because there is set to be more movement on the list. Next month, number 4 ranked Jessica McCaskill is going to be taking on number 10 ranked.
She's going to be taking on Chantel Cameron, Super Lightweight Division's unified champion.
The winner of the fight stays on the list, and the loser gets bumped off. If Jessica McCaskill ends up getting bumped off by Chantel Cameron,
Chantel's going to gain a lot of ground.
she's going to shoot past Franchon Cruz, Marlena Esparza, Terry Harper, Alycia Baumgartner, and Senicia Estrada, because she will have, in effect, beat the same number of champions that they have, but she'll be her division's undisputed Ring Magazine and Lineal champion. She'll be in possession of all the belts at 140 pounds. That's if she beats Jessica.
Remember, Chantel beat Mary McGee for the IBF. If she beats Jessica
McCaskill is a pound-for-pound fighter, one of the best in the sport. Oh, her base style, it's not the prettiest, but it's effective, and it works. If Chantel Cameron can beat her, that's some statement. Now, if it happens the other way, and Jessica McCaskill ends up beating Chantel Cameron falls off the list, Jessica stays.
that would make Jessica McCaskill a two-time undisputed champion.
Giving her a credible enough argument to move past Amanda Serrano.
And that'd be the fourth world champion that Jessica McCaskill has unseated, taking their belts from.
She'd have Amanda Serrano beat out 4 championship scalps to 3.
Erica Farias for the WBC.
Anaís Sanchez for the WBA. Cecilia Breakus for all the marbles, all the belts at 147 pounds. And Chantel Cameron
For the WBC and IBF titles.
Whereas Amanda Serrano, years ago, she beat Maria Maderna for the WBO, Heather Hardy for the WBO, and more recently, Sarah Mahfoud of Denmark for the IBF.
She's also in possession of the WBC title, but she didn't win it from a champion per se. Jelena Marjanovic vacated the title.
Forfeited, I should say. The title wasn't won in a fight. It wasn't won in a contest. Jelena Marjanovic, upon being ordered to fight Amanda, she threw it in the air.
She handed it over. It's got to count for something.
In any event, the outcome of Cameron versus McCaskill will result in more movement on the list, and regardless of who wins, somebody's got to go. There will be a vacancy and open slot as a result.
One fighter that's already in the queue is unified junior middleweight champion Natasha Jonas,
who very recently moved up in weight this year, became a champion there, subsequently unified titles in her very next fight against then unbeaten champion Patricia Bergoult.
She, like Jessica McCaskill and Chantel Cameron, is going to be in action next month.
Cameron versus McCaskill is going down early next month on the 5th. Jonas versus D-Care, the 3-belt junior middleweight unification match. That's going down a little later on the 12th.
Natasha Jonas wins that fight, she's on this fucking list.
Takes a skilled fighter to move up as many weight classes as Natasha Jonas has moved up to become a unified junior middleweight champion. If she unifies another title, she is on this fucking list, and there's nothing you can do about it.
You fucking prick.
In men's super middleweight news, it has now been officially announced that unbeaten Zach Parker will be taking on seasoned veteran John Ryder. There were rumors and rumblings about this fight for some weeks, and I questioned whether or not it would happen because, as we all know, John Ryder, characteristically, boxes on the matchroom side of things, and Zach's one of Frank's boys over there at Queensbury and BT. I like the fight.
Glad politics didn't get in the way.
Didn't stop it from happening. I half expected the people at Matchroom to conjure up someone for John Ryder to fight instead.
I don't know, Demetrius Andrade wasn't busy with anything. I half expected him to be John Ryder's next opponent, but I like this fight. No complaints from me. It's a good fight between two mid-range to inside guys, two aggressive guys, two action guys. The winner of the fight becomes the WBO's mandatory challenger for Canelo Alvarez's brown belt.
I don't expect that fight gets ordered anytime soon, but it will be lying in wait. The winner of the fight will be in the queue.
In a pole position to eventually, at least eventually, challenge for the brown belt. Challenge for the WBO title.
John Ryder, he's got his work cut out for him, he does, because in this situation, he's the away fighter. Zach Parker, he's Frank Warren's boy. He's got that advantage. Home field advantage, so to speak.
Going down at the O2 Arena in London next month.
It was supposed to be Demetrius Andrade initially. It was supposed to be Demetrius Andrade sharing the ring with Zach Parker. And as it stands, Demetrius hasn't fought at all this year. I have not the foggiest fucking idea what this guy's going to do and where he's going to pop up moving forward, but it has definitely affected Zach Parker's schedule. Zach Parker hasn't seen action since November of last year. In that way, the night of this fight, it will have been roughly a year's time since Zach had a fight. And a part of the reason for that is he's been all tied up in this thing with Demetrius. This fight with Demetrius was supposed to have happened earlier this year.
Was supposed to have happened months ago. The fight went to a purse bid.
The people at Queensbury and BT, they won the bid. Then Demetrius pulls out injured.
Quote unquote injured. The more I think about it, the less I believe he was actually injured.
I'm just being honest. He probably thought about it, didn't like the idea of being the away fighter across the pond, across the Atlantic Ocean, as part of a Queensbury Frank Warren promotion show.
I don't think he was injured. I think he pulled out because he wasn't comfortable with the situation.
He didn't like it. In any event, they ended up revisiting the fight. Yet another purse bid gets ordered, except this time, Eddie Hearn isn't involved. He doesn't bother to put a bid in. It's just Frank Warren.
Frank places the winning bid for a lot less money than he did the first time out.
Demetrius walks away from the situation.
Guy's just running around wasting everybody's time, it seems like.
So he's out, and John Ryder's in. John Ryder, who sports a professional record of 31 wins with 5 losses, no draws,
17 knockouts.
To Zach Parker's unblemished record of 22 wins, no losses, no draws,
16 knockouts.
Zach Parker, he's got just about as many knockouts as John, just about as many in less fights, which leads me to believe that Zach Parker may in fact be the bigger puncher of the two. He's certainly the bigger guy. He stands at about 6 feet tall, maybe a little over, to the more pocket size,
the more compact John Ryder, who stands in at about 5'9".
John's a southpaw, Zach's an orthodox fighter. I don't expect that John being a southpaw is going to pose all that much of a problem, because John Ryder, in spite of being a southpaw, he's a close quarters fighter, a mid-range to inside guy, and at that range, what stance the guy fights out of.
I mean, John's not going to spend time trying to jab the guy to death or come over the top of his orthodox jab with his southpaw jab. It's not that kind of fight.
These are two guys that are going to go for the gusto. They're both mid-range to inside guys. These are both guys that are going to come forward and bring each other the fight.
Big train, little train situation between Zach and John.
John's a more experienced guy. I think that goes without saying. He shared the ring with the likes of Callum Smith, Billy Joe Saunders, all that jazz. John saw action only once last year, only once, and that was against Joseph Jerko. Church's Chicken. In September of last year, he saw action more recently in February of this year against Daniel Jacobs.
Won a split decision.
Bit controversial, if you ask me. I actually had Jacobs on my card. I actually had Daniel Jacobs winning that fight. The judges, they saw it the other way. Zach hasn't seen action since November of last year. The Marcus Morrison fight. He fought 3 times last year. He was busier then.
He fought 3 times last year. He was a lot busier last year
than he got to be this year, being all wrapped up in that Andrade situation.
Zach Parker, he's a strong guy, strong puncher. Won 5 of his last 6 fights by way of knockout or technical knockout.
5 of his last 6. Does he have what it takes to knock out today's John Ryder? You know, John's actually been stopped before, some years ago, approximately 7, at the hands of the now retired Nick Blackwell. He shared the ring with a lot of guys since then, hasn't been stopped since.
Zach's a big kid, bigger than John, young guy, strong guy.
Prolific puncher, busy puncher, body puncher. I very much like the idea of this fight. I get the sense we're going to get an all-action shootout between these two boys, which is refreshing in today's super middleweight division, where
for a lot of guys, they're saving themselves for Canelo, on certain sides of the street anyway.
The recent announcement of David Benavidez versus Jose Usyk
wouldn't be such a bad idea, wouldn't be such a bad announcement if they could have made that fight in a timely fashion.
But we've already mulled over the varying grotesqueries of those guys, how they do business, and just that entire situation over there. In any event, Parker versus Ryder, it's a really good fight.
And if Zach can knock this guy out, that's a statement victory.
The same is true in reverse for John. If John dishes out Zach his first professional loss,
that's a statement. A better statement than the statement Demetrius Andrade is making,
sitting out the entirety of this year.
How the hell are you supposed to be a fan of a fighter like that?
We're supposed to feel sorry for this guy. I'd rather focus on the fighters that are actually fighting. Just in keeping with the theme of all things Queensberry, Frank Warren's heavyweight pony in the show, Joyce, says, I think Usyk's going to vacate. He doesn't want that smoke.
For those that don't know, Joyce is Alexander Usyk's mandatory challenger. It's just a question of when the WBO is going to order that fight.
Ideally, I would like to fight Usyk, Joyce told Metro UK, but it seems like he is now looking elsewhere, considering moving back down to cruiserweight or wanting to fight Fury, but it doesn't look like that is on the table at the moment. Usyk could vacate, and then I would be elevated. I think he's probably going to vacate. He doesn't want the smoke. He has also been at it a long time, hundreds of amateur bouts over the years, and he will have earned very decent money for his last 2 bouts against Anthony Joshua. I don't know. Does he really want to take on the Juggernaut? If the Fury fight doesn't happen for him, I'm not sure. He wants to stay here and take loads of licks and have a hard fight when he doesn't have to. But I don't know what happens in boxing anymore. Fury changes his mind all the time. Usyk has a lot of options, but we will get there eventually. All I can do is keep calling people out and be patient.
Joyce Sports professional record of 15 wins, no losses, no draws, 14 knockouts, 37 years old.
Every bit the Juggernaut he's made out to be. He really does live up to that moniker, live up to that name. That's what he is. He's a Juggernaut, a physically imposing guy who's very hard to discourage, very hard to deter. Is there any truth in what he's saying, that Usyk might vacate instead of fighting him? Well, if you're Alexander Usyk, and you're this close to that last brass ring, the opportunity to become a 2-time undisputed champion, that's going to be your priority.
It's going to take precedence over everything else.
We've heard Alexander Usyk play with the idea of fighting former WBC heavyweight champion Deontay Wilder. We've even heard Usyk talk about moving back down to cruiserweight, winning some belts down there.
And what's Frank Warren going to offer Usyk for a Joyce fight anyway?
He's not going to fight for peanuts, not behind 2 Anthony Joshua fights. I mean, Alexander Usyk's not a guy who's usually...
He's not really a guy who's hard to deal with, not characteristically.
But all things within reason, he's not going to fight on the cheap. He's not going to fight for peanuts either. And what's Frank prepared to offer him for a Joyce fight? Negus Klimas mentioned Deontay Wilder as a potential opponent for Usyk, should things not work out with Fury. I thought to myself, why would they want to fight that guy? It's got to be for the money. It's got to be for the scratch. It's got to be for the cash. Deontay Wilder, compared to Joe Joyce at least, has more name value.
So does he really?
And he is a more well-known guy than Joe Joyce, at least. I think we can all admit to that.
I don't look at any of these guys through rose-tinted lenses.
To Alexander Usyk, the priority is getting Tyson Fury in the ring. That's the priority. That takes precedence over everything. But if that doesn't work out...
Hey, listen.
From the very beginning, from the moment he moved up to heavyweight, given his physical dimensions, I always felt Usyk's not going to stay up there very long. He's not going to be up there for years and years and years taking on mandatory challenger after mandatory challenger should he see himself become a champion.
Very recently, Alexander Usyk himself said that, being up there at heavyweight, it wears on him a lot more than being down there at cruiserweight.
I like Alexander Usyk just as much as the next guy, but this is boxing, and I don't look at any of these guys through rose-tinted lenses. If Alexander Usyk were to make a decision to vacate the WBO title in order to swerve a mandated fight with Joe Joyce, it just is what it is.
You know what the conversation's gonna become? You know what people are gonna say.
Knee-jerk reactions in this sport are a dime a dozen, and if news ever broke that Usyk forfeited his WBO title, his brown belt that he won from Anthony Joshua, if news ever broke that he forfeited that belt to Joe Joyce,
Let's just hope they get this fucking Fury fight over the line.
just hope we get the undisputed heavyweight title fight sometime next year. We're still seeing reports of a proposed Fury versus Chisora fight set to go down later on this year, in spite of Derek Chisora's recent comments that it's all just rumors.
I saw a fuck ton of reports that the fight's going down earlier today.
If Tyson Fury's fighting Derek Chisora for a third time, it's got to be as a keep busy fight, a maintenance fight in between now and the time that he fights Alexander Usyk. Otherwise, why the hell would you be fighting that guy again?
Most people think it's a pointless trilogy as it is.
If it's not a prelude to an Usyk fight, it's even more pointless, if you can believe that.